Why don't we try to do this on the from here forward? Let's try to limit the response time to about a minute and a half. Let's do that, and then we can pace through the rest of the stuff. And some of this you guys have already kind of talked about before. So if you just want to recap or add an additional thought, please do. So transportation, proposed solutions, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in my follow-up question if you'd address this as a part of this. And it goes back to the Economic Stabilization Fund. Should we be drawing on rainy day funds for things that could be budgeted for in the course of things? So, okay, starting with Glenn.
So as I've already said, transportation is a big priority issue. We don't have enough funding through our gas tax to currently maintain our existing roads, much less build the new infrastructure we need to address a growing population. And that's a big problem because that congestion will choke off future growth. The gas tax has not gone up in 20 years. I'm not a proponent of raising the gas tax, but the fact is that fortunately cars are becoming more fuel efficient. Some cars, like electric cars, don't use any gas. And so we need to figure out how do we have drivers who are using our roads properly pay for them. So maybe an increase in vehicle registration fees, for people that are acquiring new cars or buying used cars to provide some additional funding that's make up for that gap where the gas tax is not covering. Also, we've got to stop diversions. The Texas legislature for a number of years has diverted funds out of the transportation fund to pay for things like DPS and other things that are very good things, but instead of those items coming out of the general fund, they're coming out of the transportation fund, and that's only made the problem worse.
Great. Okay. Stacy?
Completely agree with transportation that we need to end diversions. We do have enough in our budget to be spent on transportation. The problem is that all of it is not being spent on transportation. A lot of it is being diverted elsewhere in regards to the gas sales tax as well as the vehicle sales tax. Not all of it's going to where funding transportation. So I'm all for ending diversions for that, just so that what money is being budgeted for and being allocated for is actually being spent where it's supposed to be. The other idea is, traditional turnpikes. The whole idea of, users paying it until it, the creation of specific freeways or whatnot get paid off, and then after it gets paid off, remove that. And, yeah.
Transportation, as well as all of our infrastructure, it needs to be a high priority. There's 1,000 people moving to the state of Texas every day. People talk about raising the gas tax, but the reality is it was last increased in '93, but we're collecting $1 billion more every year from that, even though it hasn't been raised. So it's a good source. And yeah, people talk about ending diversions. We have to do that as well. But the problem is TxDOT has a shortfall of about $3 billion annually, and the diversions are about 1.6 billion. So there's still a shortfall. What Texas needs is a predictable source of revenue for transportation. If you look historically, at one point, transportation was about 30% of the state budget. Now it's south of 10%. So we talk about it in this type of environment, these forms, as transportation is a priority. But when you look at our budget, it's not. It's almost a rounding error. So what I would do is recommend that we dedicate vehicle sales tax to transportation. You could phase that in over 3 years. But what that would do is that would generate another $3 billion annually for transportation, and then the diversions would be another 1.6 as well. So if we make those two changes, then transportation is adequately funded within the state of Texas, and we can support the growth that we have. This is the reason why we have toll roads, by the way. If you look at the city of Plano, 3 of its 4 boundaries have toll roads, and it's because of the underfunding of transportation. And I've got 1 second left.
Quick question follow-up for each of you guys. Then Stacy mentioned this. Well, 2 things. Do you favor turning existing state highways into tollways? That's one question. And then the second is, as Stacy mentioned, right? We're going to build a toll road, and then when it's paid for, the tolls will end, and they never end. So those 2 questions, address those.
So absolutely not. I do not believe we should turn our existing state highways or federal highways into toll roads. We've already paid for those as taxpayers, and we don't need to be paying somebody else again for the right to use them. I've seen studies that indicate that the use of tolls are 3 times more expensive than traditional funding mechanisms for building new transportation infrastructure. So I don't know about you, but I think we have enough toll roads surrounding our district, and we don't need any more. We need to come up with other sources to fund that. You mentioned the rainy day fund and increases to that. I wanted to mention this earlier. Fortunately, because of the booming economy in Texas and a lot driven by energy revenues, the comptroller just actually increased the rainy day fund by $2.5 billion. So I think a portion of those funds should also be dedicated to new transportation infrastructure.
Stacy, quick comment on that?
Also agree that no, I would not agree with turning, public roads into toll roads. And really, I think what we also need to do is, the reason perhaps that we have so many or surrounding us is that, we have what's called public-private partnerships, and that, we pay for it as taxpayers, but then they sell it to a private company who then, increases the toll costs, however they want to, and then we continue having to pay for that. And I don't think that's right, which is why, I support traditional turnpikes where, as if you're using it, you pay for it until, the cost of construction and maintenance gets removed, or gets paid off, and then the toll is then removed, and then, you don't have to continue paying for increased tolls every time you try to drive on one of those.
Okay, Matt?
We dedicate vehicle sales tax to transportation. We won't need toll roads, we won't need turnpikes, we won't need anything. Transportation will be sufficiently funded within the state of Texas.
Okay.
You wanted me to talk faster, right? We only have a minute and a
No,
half
you're
now.
good, that's good. I think you've sufficiently covered that. Let's move on to,
Quick follow-up and just rebuttal that. I disagree with Matt that while you can cover the current funding costs by doing that, currently the estimates are that $34 billion are needed to bring our current level of transportation infrastructure up to the level where it needs to be, and to provide the additional infrastructure to meet growing demand. So I think we can get there on a stopgap measure by capturing these additional revenues, and we should, but it doesn't cover that $34 billion gap that's currently estimated out there to provide the infrastructure needed to address current needs. And I know y'all have been on the roads, how incredibly congested they are. Go from Dallas to Austin on any given day, and you get stuck in traffic nonstop the whole way down there.
okay, Matt, quick
The
follow-up.
$34 billion figure is over a period of time, so actually what I propose would address that. The $34 billion doesn't need to be spent in 1 year, it's over a period of time, so it would be sufficient. One thing I would talk about as far as congestion, one of the reasons why we've got congestion in Collin County is because of all the construction that's going through. We've got widening of US 75, US 380, Preston Roads being widened all the way up to the Grayson County line. We are actually very well positioned and blessed here in Collin County. We have $2 billion of transportation funding here locally. The issue is outside Collin County is where we have transportation issues. But we're actually very well blessed and well funded here in Collin County for transportation.
Okay, let's kind of move on then.